Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I know this is going to be a controversial video today, but I wanted to come out with a video about Game of Thrones for the channel. I know this had a controversial conclusion that came out back in 2019, but actually I never watched this show until this past fall, and I instantly fell in love with the show like many others, and I actually was able to go into the show blind. I barely knew of any spoilers, which was great. I didn't really follow the show back when it was in its prime and coming out, of course, seeing pictures and seeing a couple references to it, but never really had anything spoiled for me in terms of, character deaths and major plot points and plot twists and things like that. It was just a really great show. I know I was late to the party, but I'm glad I did check it out. But hey, before we get into the video real quick, be sure to like the video and check out the rest of the channel if you are new. Feel free to subscribe for more. I can also be found on Twitter and TikTok at analyzethis_YT. Now, I wouldn't say I love the final season, but I was impressed with some things, and most of the plot points made sense to me when comparing those moments to basically the overall theme of the show. Now let's talk about the Battle of Winterfell first. Game of Thrones always did a fantastic job every season building up to that big battle. Every major battle in this show was phenomenal, and the Battle of Winterfell did not disappoint. The battle was intense and jaw-dropping. The Night King was a badass as usual. You were always on the edge of your seat just waiting for characters to die. And honestly, I think I appreciated the build-up to the battle the most. The acting from all the main characters was great. It was very emotional the night before, watching everyone have conversations as they braced for what was to come. And nobody slept. You just had a lot of good conversations, heartfelt moments between these people that, they made it through all this shit in the show. They made it to this point. And you just knew that, probably not everybody's gonna make it and be alive, 24 hours from now. And I also felt that the main character deaths were appropriate and emotional. The one issue many people have, and I do have that same issue as well, is the way the Night King went out. I'm mad that he never got to fight with Jon, that they never crossed swords. I mean, the dragon fight in the sky was pretty cool, and yeah, it's badass to see the Night King raise the dead, but that final time he did that to avoid a fight with Jon, in my opinion, was bogus. And Arya leaping from a great distance to kill him out of nowhere was not satisfying at all. Arya already got her revenge on the Freys in regards to the Red Wedding. The final kill of Arya, in my opinion, should have been Cersei. I would have done that differently as well. That would have been very satisfying. And personally, I think the majority of the main cast left at this point received a proper ending. Theon, who went through a lot in this show, was able to die a hero as basically both a Greyjoy and a Stark. Brienne of Tarth becoming a knight was also well-deserved. She was one of the best characters in the show, one of my favorite characters, somebody that went from, I assume, to be just a side character for a bit to somebody that would play a major role and stick around for the entirety of the show was awesome. I did not see that coming. And I could see why so many people were hyped when she was going to be casted as Captain Phasma in Star Wars because of the great performance in Game of Thrones. But I will say I wish her and Jaime would have stayed together. I thought Jaime is the one character that should have had a better ending. They basically wrapped up his redemption arc when he left King's Landing and fought at Winterfell. He was upset with Cersei for not admitting how bad the current situation was for the Lannisters and all of Westeros at this point. And Jaime also sleeping with Brienne could have ushered in a new chapter in Jaime's life, him being with a more honorable woman and him moving on from the toxicity of his family, the Lannisters. But I guess it was still bold and heroic of him to go back to Cersei and die. But the total 180 on his character arc after everything they set up to that point, in my opinion, was disappointing, and I'm kind of mad that happened. Sansa Stark's arc completion was great as well. Her story was one of the most tragic in the show. She watched her father get killed. She was abused by Joffrey. She was constantly on the run and used by Peter Baelish. I mean, just to name a few of the major things that happened to her on her journey throughout this show. She did learn a lot and developed great skills for politics and dealing with conflict in a non-violent manner. It seems fitting that a Stark with her background gets appointed to rule the North. To me, it wasn't controversial, and I thought it was a great choice. The three characters that people had the biggest issues with, however, were Jon Snow, Daenerys Targaryen, and Bran Stark. Jon was the ethically and morally good guy in the show. We learned late in the show that he was a Targaryen and the rightful heir to the throne. Most people wanted him to rule Westeros. It sucked to see him get punished for the way he did for saving Westeros from another deranged Targaryen. People were upset that Daenerys ended up turning bad, Personally, I saw it coming. Like Sansa, Daenerys had a tragic story arc throughout the show. Sure, she rose to power, gained allies, won battles, but she always found tragedy around every corner. She lost her brother and husband early on. People laughed at her and insulted her because she was a woman and they felt that she had no right to lead or do anything, so she was always laughed at, looked down upon. Everywhere she turned, there was conflict. And then she started to lose most of her inner circle, Sarah Barristan, and near the end, Jorah and Missandei. She also lost 2 of her dragons, so she dealt with constant loss and pain, and to me, it all made sense. A lot of people hated the fact that she turned so suddenly in the final season, and maybe she did. Maybe that needed to be changed and done a little bit differently. But to me, everything that led up to the final season when she decided to burn Westeros with her dragon, it just made sense to me. I was kind of sold on the fact that she was turning. Also, isn't this basically the underlying theme of the show and of this world? That many people are bad and do bad things to gain power, and those that are in power continue to do horrible things or become even worse over time. We all felt emotional seeing how things turned sour for Jon and Daenerys, and honestly, I don't think that was due to bad writing. I think the idea was a good idea, but it is tough to sell the audience when the sudden turnaround happens so quickly and right at the end. When reviewing stuff, I always tell people to go back in time when everyone was going on this journey. Now, I did not go on this journey, so I can't really imagine going through season 7, then having to wait eagerly for the conclusion of 8 just to see how this story ended. So it was a different experience for me, but I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of those people that were watching it in real time per se. So if the end goal is to truly appoint a new type of leader for Westeros, then Daenerys unfortunately fell out of favor. No one was happy to hear that Bran Stark was appointed king, and I felt the same way. I understood that in the grand scheme of things, after everything played out, he may have been the logical pick, but not the sexiest pick. Bran seemed like a lame pick because he was always kind of a weird, limited character. Unfortunately, he was limited due to being paralyzed by the fall. He couldn't fight or be the kind of hero that Jon Snow was. His story throughout the show was also a little odd. For me, I never fully understood the whole three-eyed raven stuff. I knew it had significance, but personally, I would have liked to have seen it explained in a better way. Like, I get Bran's importance as the three-eyed raven. He's got the power of a green seer who could see the past, present, and future through visions. He's also a warg who can take control of other living beings. So he has some impressive powers, especially for someone of his stature in terms of being this young person who's paralyzed and things like that. He's limited, but his powers actually do make him a pretty cool person. And he also makes for a pretty impressive leader that would appear to be using his powers and wisdom to make Westeros a better place. He is unlike the many leaders that came before him. He will not rule with fear and violence. So honestly, it makes sense for him to become king if the story is truly about ending with someone that breaks the wheel. Perhaps the writers could have fleshed out his story and journey in a much more interesting way to have more fans happy with the series' conclusion. So I agree that season 8 could have been done differently in order to make the fates of Jon, Daenerys, and Bran much more convincing. However, I can't help but think that this conclusion made sense based off of everything we saw throughout the series, and this world always seemed to be about power, greed, violence, death, and tragedy. Well, let me know what you guys think in the comments. This was just a fun video to give my thoughts on the show. I know I was late to the party, but it was really fun last year to binge this show. It was really great, and I made sure to keep up with House of the Dragon. I watched that as soon as it came out. Going forward, I'm going to be keeping up with any type of Game of Thrones content. With that said, maybe I'll do some House of the Dragon content down the road as well. I was a big fan of that first season. So again, be sure to give a like on the video, subscribe for more. Again, you can also find me on Twitter and TikTok at @AnalyzeThis_YT. Feel free to leave your comments below in the comments section. Thanks for watching and take care.